Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this the Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better, and Michael Gove has decided to make it a hell of a lot worse. That video title is no joke. I think under this new definition, pretty much all of Britain would be under the label of extremist, given some of the conversations we've been having recently. Gove names 3 Muslim groups that could breach extremist rules. A new official definition aims to ban those with violent or intolerant ideology from government links and funds. It is worth pointing out at this point, I don't disagree with absolutely everything Gove has done today, but I would say that subheading is putting the new definition lightly. So Gove has named 3 organisations that could fall foul of the new definition of extremism, but insisted that the new rules will not hinder free speech. The community's secretary said that the Muslim Association of Britain, which is associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Islamic human rights group Cage give rise to concern for their Islamist orientation and views. Gove said MEND, which promotes participation by British Muslims in voluntary bodies and institutions, was the 3rd body from whom the government could withdraw cooperation. And this is good. I don't want my tax money going towards cooperation, which means government funding of associations that are Islamist at heart. And I'm hoping that this would be one step away from just branding them a terrorist organisation or something along those lines, because I think it's absolutely fair to punish and even ban groups in the UK that are actively Islamist in nature, because the whole idea of Islamism is that you promote Islam to the point where it's almost fundamental to Quran teaching and Muhammad's teaching, which includes beheading infidels and, in all but name, being another ISIS. So I'd say we've started off pretty well here, though it could go further, oddly enough. As part of the new definition of extremism, ministers will name and shame non-criminal groups barred from exerting influence over government policy. Groups covered by the definition will be denied taxpayer funding and prevented from meeting ministers and officials or gaining a platform that could legitimise them through association with the government. Again, another ideal solution. I do not want any anti-British group, and that can range anywhere from literally wanting to genocide the Brits of Britain, all the way to effectively saying that the native inhabitants of the land don't exist as an ethnic group, should be barred from going to the government. Of course they should. It's absolutely ridiculous that influence over the government for the past 3 decades has effectively all been anti-British from what pretty much everyone from the UK can see. Gove told the Commons, "We will be holding these and other organisations to account to assess if they meet our definition of extremism and will take action as appropriate. Organisations such as the Muslim Association of Britain and other groups such as Cage and MEND, Muslim Engagement and Development, give rise to concerns for their Islamist orientation and views." He said neo-Nazi groups such as the British National Socialist Movement, I've not even heard of that, and Patriotic Alternative would be assessed. And again, I don't have an issue with the government saying that you can't have any association with the government, but I think the problem is that when you are equating Patriotic Alternative, because I'll be honest, I've said this for a while, Patriotic Alternative are just a bit of a meme group, and I know that that is probably going to annoy quite a few people in my comments who are straddling the line of Patriotic Alternative and centre-right post-liberal thinking, but at the end of the day, Patriotic Alternative mainly just set up a few marches and post a few stickers about. And it is absolutely ridiculous that Sam Mellier got 2 years in jail for his stickers. But the problem we're going to run into here is that once you're branded an extremist, I mean, whether this is Labour or the Tories, to be honest, I don't think it matters all that much. You have basically got a black mark on you now, and, well, the government can say we're going to jail all extremists, and, well, you're screwed then. You're already defined as an extremist, which we haven't even have defined yet, by the way. But I'm saving that spicy part for later. But yes, Patriotic Alternative, I would not even think of putting on the same lines as Islamists. They are different type of politically extreme groups, and I think even people within Patriotic Alternative can realise that they are radicals, but they aren't violent radicals. And that I am okay with. Whereas we seem to have a lot of associates with the Muslim Association of Britain and others who have, been involved in some sort of terrorism or, left Britain to join a terrorist organisation. As far as I'm aware with Patriotic Alternative, they're actually pretty good at kicking out that sort of riffraff, but I'm happy to be corrected in the comments. Gove said, "We are no way intending to restrict freedom of expression, religion or belief, but the government cannot be in a position where, unwittingly or not, we sponsor, subsidise or support in any way organisations or individuals opposed to the freedoms we hold dear. I'm sure we would agree that organisations who promote neo-Nazi ideology, argue for forced repatriation, a white ethno-state, and the targeting of minority groups for intimidation." To be fair, as far as I'm aware with Patriotic Alternative, it is actually voluntary repatriation, and they will actually pay the people repatriating. So when it comes to wanting a white ethno-state, I would actually say that's true. I think Patriotic Alternative would be fine with an 100% German England. However, would I bother branding them extremist for that? I don't see the point. Anyway, these are precisely the types of groups about which we should be concerned and whose activities we will assess against the new definition. Well, you managed to jail someone from Patriotic Alternative for sticking some stickers around wherever it was, somewhere in Yorkshire. So don't worry, I think that threat is quite well and truly squashed. I don't think they are the biggest threat to democracy at the moment. The activities of the extreme right wing are a growing worry. The targeting of Muslim and Jewish communities and individuals by these groups is of profound concern, requiring assertive action. Well, assuming that's actually true, yeah, sure, go for it, but from an awful lot of recent news, they either get caught before they actually do anything, are jailed for having stickers, as I say, or they're just lone wolf maniacs. I do mean it. Even far-right groups like Patriotic Alternative, they actually seem pretty good at getting out the violent riffraff, which I think is to be commended, to be quite honest with you. I mean, listen to this. Quick backstory. A guy called Kevin Medlock attempted a terrorist attack in Harrow last week, attacking a solicitors who had helped out with helping criminals avoid deportation due to being involved with channel crossings. Anyway, he got into the solicitors, he was disarmed by the people who worked at the solicitors, and these are just some things heard in the court case. Asked if he thought his plan was the right way to go about trying to change the problem, Medlock told officers, "When politics fails and the people have no alternative, I think violence is the only natural progression of that thinking to get change." In theory that's true, but I'd still argue nowhere near that point when it comes to our politics. Cray describes Medlock's politics as racist to its core and said it was difficult to see how he could have been more clearer as to his mindset and purposes, given that he was shouting out racial slurs and saying things like the Austrian painter was right. He also invoked Enoch Powell's name, which is pretty annoying given that Enoch Powell would have been nowhere near this guy's politics or Hitler's politics, but things like that are unfortunately going to make it harder to promote Enoch Powell. His brand of terrorism was clear. On his own admission, at the time of these events, he identified as a Nazi, believing Hitler was right. We suggest that the plan was designed to intimidate people, not just those in office but in public. He wanted people to see the Nazi flag flying over Harrow. Yes, as far as terrorist attacks go, I'd say that this one clearly wasn't well thought out. A solicitor and officer of the court handcuffed with the swastika in a street in Harrow. Police later found Medlock had access to an article published 2 days earlier, headlined "Revealed the Kingpins Who Operate the Channel Trafficking Rackets and the UK Lawyers Who Coach Asylum Seekers to Help Them Avoid Deportation." Mr. Cray said it was no doubt an issue of public interest about illegal immigration to this country, but it switches from people said to being arranging illegal immigration to the work of lawyers that deal with migration and challenges to deportation. And this trial is ongoing, and I will be honest with you, this again sounds like a lone wolf mentalist. However, I do want to make one thing clear. If it turns out that a group like Patriotic Alternative or whatever group it was involved with this terrorist attack and was actively encouraging him, that is fine to then put that group on the extremist category. They are clearly a violent nuisance and need to be dealt with. I have my doubts that Patriotic Alternative was involved in this, though. And if that is the case, then we do not have sufficient evidence that they should then be put on an extremist blacklist. Anyway, returning to the article, Gove insisted that the new rules will not affect other potentially controversial groups. Our definition will not affect gender-critical campaigners, those with conservative religious beliefs, trans activists, environmental protest groups, or those exercising their proper right to free speech. The government is taking every possible precaution to strike a balance in drawing up the new definition between protecting fundamental rights and safeguarding citizens. He said the new definition was needed to beat this poison of far-right and religious extremism. The time has come for all of us to stand together to combat the force of division and to beat this poison. Again, the intentions, as far as I'm concerned, are all pretty good. A huge problem is that when you are casting a net over extremism, because this is a crazy modern clown decade that we're in, for some reason you have to show the media and show all the chattering classes that, oh, don't worry, we're going after the far right as well. Don't worry, we're going after your little boogeyman. Which, to be fair, as I say, given that we seem to, genuinely from what I can see, actually be having a rise of these genuine far-right terrorist actions, it's not a particularly unfair thing to do necessarily, but when you are then involving Patriotic Alternative, who, as I say, as far as I'm concerned, have only been involved in peaceful political activity, then you're taking it too far. I'm afraid they're a scapegoat, and I'll be honest with you, if you're in Patriotic Alternative, I'd honestly get out now and just try and burn all bridges with them, because if they are deemed extremists and Labour come in, you're genuinely under the threat of political arrest. I mean, I know I have absolutely no problem with avoiding that, given that I am openly against Patriotic Alternative, and one of these sensible people that isn't like hope not hate and just says, you're all a bunch of idiot racists. I think it's actually fair that I do actually listen to what you have to say, and then actually do make criticisms of what you say. The big one obviously being Mark Collette's whole, the one book that everyone should read and we should keep for future generations was Mein Kampf. And then for some reason he added 2 more books from other American neo-Nazis and Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizards. Anyway, that's just my advice for those of you on Patriotic Alternative. Take it or leave it. He said the new definition was needed to beat this poison of far-right and religious extremism, that whereas Just Stop Oil are allowed to just continue with their criminal damage. The time has come for us all to stand together and combat the forces of division and beat this poison. The liberties we hold dear, and indeed the democratic principles we're all sent here to uphold, require us to counter and challenge the extremists who seek to intimidate and coerce and to divide. Again, at surface level, intentions seem fine there. The devil is quite literally in the detail, and don't worry, we'll get to the definition soon. We have to be clear-eyed about the threat we face, precise about where that threat comes from, and rigorous in defending our democracy. That means upholding freedom of expression, religion, and belief when they are threatened, facing down harassment and hate, supporting the communities facing the greatest challenge from extremist activity, and ensuring this house and this country are safe, free, and united. Yes, because it's a pretty... I don't even think we can say open secret at this point. It's just out in the open completely that MPs genuinely fear for their safety, and for some reason we are not allowed to point out the groups that are causing that problem. Lee Anderson obviously had to recently join Reform because he decided to leave the Tory party because they were ostracising him out of it for pointing out that Islamists are quite a big issue, and Labour senior politicians seem to be not doing anything about it to the point where it looks like they are even allies with those Islamists. So that's where we're up to with that. So if it is dealing with those extremists, then that is a good thing. I just think that they are casting too wide a net, and I think a large part of the reason of that is to not upset the leftist liberal media, along with the politicians and academics and all other forms of the new elite. The new extremism definition has already been announced. A list of banned groups will be published in the next few weeks after officials carry out a robust process of assessing which meets the new definition. Gove will make the final decision. Well, we'll see how that goes in a week then. However, critics have questioned the impact of the definition, given that it will not initially apply to councils, arm's-length bodies, universities and independent government bodies such as the police and Crown Prosecution Service, with a decision reversed until a later date. In other words, the people who can be deemed extremists are those not already directly involved in the government or the public sector, which is actually quite mental. We're just going to get rid of extremists on the periphery who are their own private organisations, but we won't do anything about the extremists in the public bodies. That seems a bit mad. The definition aims to include conduct that falls short of criminality but is deemed unacceptable. It is designed to respond to increased extremist threats in the UK since the Hamas attacks on Israel on October 7. Record cases of both anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic abuse have been recorded over the past 5 months. Well, maybe there was a certain politician who was right in Birmingham then. Anyway, we are finally at the definition. The new definition describes extremism as the promotion or advancement of an ideology based on violence, hatred, or intolerance. And already I have my issues. What is wrong with promoting hatred of evil people? Of murderers? What is wrong with promoting hatred of paedophiles and rapists? Should we be tolerant about those types of people? The state itself, it's not exactly a being that is actually able to hate. However, it is able to deal with things it doesn't tolerate, such as jailing rapists and murderers. So, by this own definition already, Gove has managed to say that the British state is an extremist group. So, a group that aims to negate or destroy the fundamental rights and freedoms of others. Jailing is negating the fundamental rights and freedom of others. That is what prison is. Or undermine, overturn, or replace the UK system of liberal parliamentary democracy and democratic rights. Again, on a technicality, this puts Lindsay Hoyle and the Labour Party in the extremist category, given that they went against parliamentary procedure 2 weeks ago. And if you go even further than that, remember when the Brexit vote happened? Pretty much everyone under the age of 40 was saying that old people shouldn't be able to vote, was undermining or trying to overturn democratic rights. This definition pretty much puts everyone in the United Kingdom under the banner of extremist, because absolutely everyone in the United Kingdom probably has a dodgy opinion, unless you are the ultimate NPC. And given they're probably going to include individuals at a later date, you're probably going to see pretty much all of the United Kingdom on that list. Gove said the new definition was more precise than the previous one because it included vocal or active opposition to fundamental British values. He said our democracy and our values of inclusivity and tolerance are under challenge from extremists. In order to protect our democratic values, it is important both to reinforce what we have in common and to be clear and precise in identifying dangers posed by extremism. The thing is as well, if this carries on through to Labour getting into Parliament and they give the vote to 16-year-olds and all foreigners, no matter if they're actually citizens or not, then saying, oh gosh, that shouldn't happen, makes you an extremist. I just want to make that clear. That is what this definition means. You cannot advocate for reducing the franchise. That is crazy. That puts everyone, pretty much everyone in the 1800s, as an extremist. The pervasiveness of extremist ideologies has become increasingly clear in the aftermath of October 7 attacks and poses a real risk to the security of our citizens and our democracy. This is the work of right-wing and Islamist extremists who are seeking to separate Muslims from the rest of society and create divisions within the Muslim community. Islamists are trying to do that, or right-wingers. They seek to radicalise individuals, deny people their full rights, suppress freedom of expression, incite hatred, and undermine our democratic institutions. Today's measures will ensure that government does not inadvertently provide a platform to those setting out to subvert democracy and deny other people's fundamental rights. This is the first in a series of measures to tackle extremism and protect our democracy. That is so funny. That is a couple of steps away from sounding like it came straight from Helldivers 2. I mean, I understand the government not providing a platform when it's not part of their manifesto, but then when you say get people you don't... Say you get a communist government, well, using this definition, they can literally just pick and choose who gets to go on the extremist list or not. Hell, the Tories are probably going to do that themselves. I just don't understand why under the current definition we have now, we can't put these Islamist groups on the prescribed terrorist list, given that there are clearly people coercing others to not enter London and make it a no-go zone for Jews on Saturdays, and there has been arson attacks on MPs' offices, other MPs who are fearing for their own safety and possibly even life, and we just go around and arrest them and either deport them or put them in prison. I know the prisons are full. Build more. Speaking on Thursday morning, Gove refused to say whether comments by the Tory donor Frank Hester that Diane Abbott made him want to hate all black women and should be shot would meet the new extremism definition. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I don't really care that someone was ridiculously hyperbolic when they thought they were in private. Different people will have different views, he told Radio Times. He said, Times Radio, sorry. He said that Hester's comments were horrific and racist, but it would be up to the academics, officials and ministers to carefully consider a person or group's behaviour over a longer period before labelling them extremists. Oh God, academics are involved, the civil service are involved. We're not going to make it, bros. We're all going to be referenced to Prevent in the coming months. And this is perfect groundwork for Labour if they want to make being right-wing illegal full stop. Because questioning who really should be able to vote is becoming quite a permanent question in society. All left-wingers think you should be voting from the day you're born. An awful lot of right-wingers want to at the very least raise it to 21. And some even want to go as far as saying you have to own property at the very least. And that's just on one subject. Now that this has been changed once, if Labour get in the next few months, they are absolutely going to expand that definition. And if you watch these videos and like them, you are probably going to end up being on that list if you are politically active. And even the Tories are probably going to go further than just people on this list can't get government money or influence government policy in policy focus groups or anything like that. So they're obviously going to go further with it. If they're actually going to get behind building more prisons for our expanding population, they'd probably start actually jailing people in that. But for the moment, we are just on step one. And as I say, it's laid the groundwork for Labour to make having very standard opinions 10 years ago illegal, and make having left-wing opinions 20 years ago illegal too. So there you go, that's me documenting the very first step to my path to a jail cell. That's everything I really wanted to cover today, because I just found that definition so absolutely absurd. I just had to do a quick video covering it, and well, it is quick, it's only just over 20 minutes. So with that, that's everything I've got for you today. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.